Joe?
Apologize, I got stuck behind an accident.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe.
Want a couple minutes to get settled in?
Yes.
Good to go? There you go.
Ready?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting to order of Village of Pawling Planning Board, June 11th, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead of myself, 2024. Vivian, would you call the roll, please?
Rob Pfister, absent. Marie Lavori. Here. Louis Sella.
Here.
Pete Pinelli.
Here.
Joe and Karen here.
Pete, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Please stand, face the flag of our country, pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which we live, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We got our line wrong.
I might have a line.
Yeah, you did.
I did.
You did, oh, baby.
That's all right, we
Yeah,
still got
that's
the
okay.
pledge.
As long as it's the
Yeah.
right country.
Yeah, thank goodness for that. Yeah.
This pledge to
I
me.
won't say anything about the Marines going forward.
Listen, you, all weekend.
Okay, I'd like to have everybody get a chance to read the minutes. I'd like to have an approval of the minutes from April 9th, 2024, please.
I make a motion, we accept the minutes.
Take a motion. Have a second, please? I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carry. Okay, first on the agenda is 68 Charles Coleman Boulevard, the O'Connor's Public House.
Okay, Rob Carlson here representing O'Connor's Public House. We are looking for permission to expand our back patio, which we use for dining, extra seating, and trivia purposes when we have our trivia on Thursdays. So people come sit in the back, gets very crowded, and we want to essentially create more space for everybody to sit, more comfort, bring more people and watch, play trivia. It's become a very popular thing, and we'd like to utilize it more if possible. We essentially are seeking permission to expand throughout the entire length of our building, which we have permission for from Joe Downey, who's the owner of the property. We have a lease with him stating we can take as much of the back of the building as we need, as we want it, to add seating, add games, things like cornhole, Jenga has become very popular kind of thing. And essentially just more space so people are more comfortable back there. We're looking to essentially right now double the size. We don't want to take over the whole back lot right now as it sits. We want to just expand it by double, move the fence about 25 feet is the hope. Add anywhere from 4 to 5 tables, which would be potentially 25 seats. But we wanted to put on the sketch everything that we could potentially do. We don't intend on building all those seats, but we didn't want to make it seem like we were trying to pass it off as something that wouldn't be seating. We also hope to use some of it as storage, because we have very limited space over there, so we want to be able to store extra furniture, bar stools, stuff like that. Yeah, we don't want it to be anything too complicated, just a little extra space for everybody to sit.
So right now, Rob, are you going from your existing outdoor seating area all the way to Charles Coleman?
So that's what we're seeking approval for. What we want to do is essentially cut this in half for now, and add this amount of seats just so that we can have extra space, but we wanted to have the potential to do all of it if we needed to.
And it's all going to be outdoor?
All outdoors.
It's not going to be enclosed?
No,
And do you have a copy of the lease from Joe Downey?
we do.
Okay, and how long does that lease go for?
If I remember correctly, we have it for another 7 additional years, is it? 7?
7 years from 2021 with a 5-year option to renew.
So yeah, 7 years from 2021 with a 5-year option to renew after that time period.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also like to add, we did get site plan approval for the initial patio. So it's a space that's already been approved, and we just hope to expand that a little bit.
Yeah, that small little area that you have back there right
Exactly.
now.
Yeah.
And you just want to go,
Yep.
same size, same.
Same dimensions, just moving
just
the
straight on
fence.
down.
It's just gonna come out and make a right to center. You're not going
Yep.
straight back.
Yeah, exactly. So you come out through the bar here, and you make a right, and it would be.
So it's an amended site plan application then, basically, is that what it would be, right?
I think so. I mean, we'd have to take a closer look to
Right,
make sure.
but it sounds like that.
Do you have all the approvals that you need for this particular project?
We do. Our landlord has approved, Joe Downey has approved. You know, like I said, we had the initial site plan approval. I don't know if there's more required from that. But, you know, all the parties involved have agreed and are happy with it.
Any board members have any questions about the project at all? Do I go to Karen?
How many seats do you have outside currently?
Currently, it's about 60 seats, 60.
Currently, you have 60 seats
Yeah.
outside, okay. And how large is the bar, like the bar space, the patron space inside?
Inside, it's about 70 seats,
75.
75 seats.
And what would be the hours of operation and the overall season?
Same as it currently is. We close the patio at 11, kill the music, turn off any lights, and we open at 11. So 11 to 11.
And it's Monday through, it's every day? of the
Well,
week?
so that's Monday through Thursday, and then Friday and Saturday, we can do till midnight, 1?
Oh, yeah, midnight outside.
Midnight, I believe is what we had to agree to with the neighbors.
So that was my next question is, have you spoken to the neighbors about
Yeah,
this?
everybody, we have the neighbors directly behind it. We're very close with them. They're happy with it. It doesn't bother them. They like to sit and watch from their staircase. Everybody seems to be on board. All the parties are happy with it.
I'm not aware of any complaints that have come in from the music or anything like that, or the lighting.
We try to be respectful as possible, you know, not there to disrupt anybody's evening.
Will there be a change in your operations with regard to refuse?
It should theoretically stay the same, you know, because we don't, like I said, the hope is not to add so many seats so much as increase the space that's there, just because everybody's packed in on top of each other when we're out there. But we also, you know, we have our private dumpster in our driveway, so we can handle extra refuse as it is.
And are you hiring more employees for this?
We just went through a round of hiring for the summer as we staff up when it gets busier. So we have a surplus of staff right now, so it would be nice to have more shifts to bring up people on.
I mean, and kind of generally speaking, how many more employees does that space need? Is it
It
just
doesn't
one
really,
more person?
yeah, maybe one more person to come in and help, but, you know, it's not, it can be handled, it could be handled with what we have, but we did staff up. Just because in the summer it does get busier, the patio gets more use, so we try to dedicate a server out there specifically as it is anyway, so.
And how have the neighbors and how's your lighting been and how have the neighbors felt about the lighting that you have currently? I imagine you plan to do the same sort of lighting?
Yeah, basically mirror it, same thing. Nobody's complained about lighting. It's relatively low lit as it is, just
Okay.
for an atmosphere's sake. But yeah, no, we have not gotten any complaints from neighbors. So as far as I know, nobody's raised questions.
And for the outdoor storage, have you looked at the zoning code to see if there are any requirements?
We haven't
related
looked
to that?
specifically, but it's more, you know, what we're hoping to do, we have some extra tables that we've been, you know, we see it, we grab it kind of thing. And it would just be trying to keep it to the side, but I mean, I'd be happy to look into, you know, what the requirements would be for that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know offhand, but I would check the zoning code.
Okay.
Because generally speaking, there are requirements for outdoor storage.
Sure, okay.
And you might just start considering, even in the absence of those, what you would use to buffer
Mhm.
any outdoor storage.
Sure.
Right now, I noticed that you have a blue tarp coming from the existing building over the outdoor area.
Well, so I had, I guess, mistakenly tried to add a tarp that could be removable, because every Thursday when we try to do trivia, it decides to rain. It's driving us nuts. I took that down, so there's a couple sails, like wind, sun sails that are up now, but that's it.
Yeah, the reason why I bring that up is because from Charles Coleman Boulevard, it looks a little tacky, a little sloppy when I saw that blue tarp. I wouldn't
Yeah,
wanna
so I
see-
think the tarp,
I don't wanna, I wouldn't wanna see anything on top of the railing.
Yeah, absolutely.
to make it,
I know what you're talking about. I tried to put a big tarp up. I didn't quite finish at the moment, and then went to finish it up, and the building inspector came, he's like, we can't have this, took it down right away, so that's not up
Okay,
anymore.
just to make sure that if you're gonna include anything, any
Yeah.
covering, make
Oh,
sure.
well, no, we would come back and,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, you actually be putting up like a sunscreen is what you're gonna ask for, a sunscreen.
Yeah, down the line, we'd like to put up maybe an awning.
An awning of
Yeah,
some kind.
it's hard to find an awning that size. They're custom made and pricey, but.
Joe?
My only comment is, if you proceed through the process, I'd want to see a copy of the lease.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So,
I think we just proceed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, we don't see any issues with you submitting a site plan application.
Okay.
And you can see Vivian for that, Rob, the site plan application?
Yep, okay.
Everything that you need?
Do you know the submission date, Viv? It's usually in 20s, right?
and while Viv is looking for that, when you come in, it would be useful to have a plan, and I'm sure Karen will have comments on the plan, much more sophisticated than mine, but that kind of shows a before and after.
Yeah,
Right
absolutely.
there, right, that
Sure.
just delineates.
Yeah, I was looking for the.
This is fine for
conference
sketch plan,
and,
yeah,
sure.
all good, yeah.
So June 25th for the July 9th agenda.
Okay.
Planning board agenda,
Okay.
before noon.
Before. Okay. All right, very good.
That's it, thank you.
Thank you.
$56L?
Good evening, everyone.
Hey, Kurt?
All right.
Good, how are you?
Good, good. Kurt Johnson from J Group Designs, here on behalf of the owner, Artur, of the property at 56 Elm Street. Just wanted to run an idea in front of the board, just to kind of get opinions and whatever. He's recently purchased the property. It's 56 Elm Street. It's just under half an acre of property, and it's on the northerly end of Elm Street, and it has frontage on Walnut Street as well. It's in the R3 zoning district. It currently has a 1.5-story single-family residence on that property right now. And he would like to convert it or add to the building and make it a multifamily
So
building.
right now, this single-family home.
Single-family now.
Single-family home.
Right. The attachment was with a letter. It's currently not in the zoning to allow for multifamily housing. You can, with special permit, you can get an accessory dwelling, two-family in there. So
Right.
this is a map of just kind of the vicinity here, showing all the yellow on it is single-family. The pink color here is two-family, and there are a few three-family and four-family residences in the zone, in the vicinity of the property.
But this particular piece of property is zoned for one family.
This whole zone, R3, this is.
Right. And he wants to make a multifamily.
Correct.
Do you know under what auspices the ones that are 2 and 3 family were approved, did they predate?
I'm
the
assuming
zoning?
they're pre-existing
Yeah.
non-conforming, most
I
likely.
mean, we'll check, but I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
I mean, I took the information off parcel access
Yeah.
of what the use was
Mhm.
with the tax records, so.
And you haven't been before any other boards at
No,
this point?
we're
This
just-
is your first stop?
We're before you to kind
Yeah.
of see if this is worth taking it forward or not.
Well, this is certainly quite a request, to be perfectly honest with you, and it's gonna have to go before the ZBA.
Of course.
There's no doubt about that. Karen?
Yeah, I guess I was kind of surprised that you decided to come to the planning board first.
Yeah.
But obviously coordination between the boards is always optimal.
Yeah.
I do think that Joe can speak more clearly on this, but I would think that without their action, the planning board really has nothing to say on this.
Yeah, if you go before the ZBA, they would refer it to the planning board for a recommendation
Right.
on whatever variances are necessary, and we would, of course, then look at that in conjunction with whatever plan you're proposing. I don't, and it would be a coordinated review in any event, no matter who kicked the process off. But I don't think we can do a substantive review.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of knowing that this board has the option of the sketch conference, just to kind of
Yeah,
get it out there on the table, just kind of get an initial reaction to it, knowing it needs to go for probably a use variance.
Yeah,
To
if
the
the-
ZBA.
I mean, if board members wanted to, you could provide comments just on the concept of multifamily there. Although even that, since it's the first time you've been here, I'm not sure if you feel like you have enough information to do that, but that's, I think, what you're looking for is maybe the temperature. of
Well,
the
you
board.
know,
Exactly.
Having a little bit of experience on the ZBA as a member and the chairman, and this is gonna require a use variance, and use variance have certain criteria
Of course.
that the applicant has to meet, I think 4 or 5 tests. In each test, for a use variance has to be met, not 3 out of the 4, all 4 of them. The state makes it almost impossible for a use variance to be granted. I would think it's gonna be a pretty difficult test to have this use variance, but that, I'm not speaking for the ZBA.
Of course.
But
I
if
think
I
this-
was putting on my ZBA hat, I think it'd be pretty difficult.
I would think,
But
Kurt-
the applicant would have to come and present his case.
Yeah, and excuse me, I'm sorry, and following up on that and on my earlier question, if you were to proceed, I think it would be useful to do a little research on, because, you know, you have brought up the point that the character of that
Mhm.
strip there arguably
Yes.
is consistent with what you're trying to do.
Mhm.
But it would be useful to know whether they were granted relief, that, you know, the kind of relief you're seeking, right, in order to do that, or did they predate it? I don't know that either result is either fatal or a 100% go
No,
in either
just
event, but it would be
answer
useful
the question,
information
yes.
to posture it before the ZBA, I
Mhm.
think, if you go there.
Approximately how high are you proposing for this building approximately?
Haven't even kind of gotten that far into it because, I mean, certainly would want to keep it to a scale and proportion to the other buildings in the neighborhood, but don't want to get too far into it till we have a discussion.
That's why I'm asking, because most of the area up there I rode by there today is 1.5 stories.
Mhm.
Yeah, so what I would do before you go before the ZBA, I will look what the use variance requirements are, what the tests are,
Yeah.
and make a case on each test.
Right,
Of course, they're all gonna have to be met.
of course.
Well, another question. So the property was acquired recently?
Somewhat recently.
Yeah. Okay. That'll be part of your
Mhm.
factor analysis,
Right.
just for what it's worth. Yeah, okay.
I have nothing else.
No,
Thank you, sir. No, nothing, I'm gonna let you go.
always good to see you.
It's a pleasure.
Take care.
Night, Kurt.
Trinity Pawling, TP?
Good evening, everyone. Glenn Curry, Chief Operating Officer of Trinity Pawling School. With us this evening, we have Jim Catella, who's with Clark Companies, and Dan Tonkin, who is our Director of Physical Plant. We are before you this evening to discuss the installation of a turf baseball field and a turf athletic field on the west side of our campus of Route 22. Over the years, New York State has implemented regulations that prevent us from using pesticides, which makes it very difficult to grow grass and keep the fields proper. And, you know, the weather in the spring months has gotten very difficult for us as a school to offer spring baseball. Many times we've had to call other schools, ask to use their field, have our, what should be home games away because our field is flooded and not draining, and it's affecting our overall athletic program and recruitment. So the school would like to look at doing this possibly in 2 phases, possibly 1, but right now we have funding that's secured for the baseball field, and we're working on securing it for the multi-purpose field, which would be for soccer and football.
They'd be
and
2
lacrosse.
different fields?
Yes, they would be. So I'm gonna turn it over to Jim, and he can talk about what the project is going to entail.
Sure, thank you.
Yep.
My name's Jim Catella. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New York. And because we, at Clark Companies and Catella Engineering, build outdoor athletic fields, we don't confine ourselves to New York State. I'm licensed in 13 states. So we do design build. We've been working with Trinity Pawling on this project for a couple of years now. The project location is where their current baseball field is. Since we started getting really serious about this, we've gone out and done a number of geotechnical investigations on the site. We've identified what areas infiltrate well, and we will design the stormwater around that. We will, as we talked about, the focus for 2024 would be the baseball field. I think you have in your material that was sent, we showed the baseball field in red for 2024 and the multi-purpose field, soccer and football, in blue, just showing they could be done separately. We try to minimize truck traffic, so we will try to balance the site with cuts and fills, but we will be removing the topsoil because we have to, underneath the synthetic turf, we're going to have a porous stone base, which is shown in the details that were submitted with the project. That stone base has 40% voids, so it can hold, if there was a foot of stone there, in theory it could hold 4 inches, a 4-inch rainstorm. Because we have some pretty good infiltration rates in some of the areas, that's the way, ideally, we like to handle a conversion of topsoil to synthetic turf from New York State DEC standards. We'll be glad to work with the engineer. We've gone out also and done a new topographic survey of the entire area, the licensed professional land surveyor. So this is an up-to-date survey, was done within the last month. And we think, as we have been proceeding recently, that we're in a position to submit detailed drawings, full swept, later this month. We're in good shape for that. We're also glad to get involved with your review engineer separately before we come back to see you again. We will develop a full erosion and sediment control plan, access to the site. We're submitting the entire thing, even though in all likelihood it'll be phased. Our hope is to break ground in August so that we can be complete by November so that they'll have it for spring baseball. I agree. We build an awful lot of outdoor athletic fields. We're based, Clark Company's based in Delhi. This is our 76th year in business. The last 36 we've specialized in outdoor sports. And baseball synthetic wasn't a big thing 20 years ago. But because in the Northeast, it's tough to get on these fields in the spring, it's really been more and more popular.
Jim, you mentioned you're gonna have 4 inches of stone?
We're probably gonna have, in the end, 10 inches of stone.
Now, there's not gonna be any other drainage required?
There is some other drainage required, so I'm glad you asked. Besides that porous stone, we will have a collection pipe system, which is shown here. So the stone base is up completely under the field. We slope it toward a collection pipe. We have something we call flat drains that are also in there. They are about the size of this, only they're about an inch thick. And they pick up the water and transmit it. But water's gonna follow the path of least resistance. We're gonna try to get it all to infiltrate. But what we do with this collection area is give it a time of concentration to sit there. So we're gonna improve the stormwater management out there. Right now, that stormwater goes to a basin. It runs off. There's a stone trench, you might have seen it from the highway, you can almost see, there's a stone trench that runs along here and goes down into a basin, recharge basin. It's not a wetland, it's just a grass basin. A retention basin, correct. And we think there'll be less water going to that, because we're gonna give it the opportunity up here. It's a topsoil, these are topsoil fields, they sheet drain. They're topsoil fields that people are playing sports on, so they're compacted topsoil fields. They don't infiltrate. You get a little bit of infiltration in topsoil, but these are sheet draining fields. The synthetic turf vertically drains. It's totally, the back of the turf is totally porous, and it allows for water to go through it.
What's the life expectancy of a field like that?
The warranty is 10 years. In the Northeast, historically, and we've built over 300 of these fields in the Northeast, you're gonna get 12 to 14 years. In Florida and Texas, the warranty's 8 years, you're gonna get 8 years. Sun is the biggest enemy. We don't have sun that often up here, and really, that is,
And what does the sun
people
do?
think it's
It degrades
it
material?
degrades the fiber itself.
What does it do to the color?
The color fastness has gotten an awful lot better. 20 years ago, I would have told you, you would see it fade, especially the odd colors. And for baseball, we do color, we're proposing this to be entirely synthetic. There won't be a mound area of clay or anything, which is the way the trend has gone in the last 10 years. We will color the turf so that it looks like an infield. It looks like a mound area. The turf will be slightly different in those, what looks like skin.
So the infield is going to be turf as well?
Yeah,
Everything.
go to Renegades, look at this new field they just put in there.
I'm used to Yankee Stadium.
But in the
That's all
college,
grass.
on the college baseball,
Thank you.
Down in Harrison, they got one in Harrison, they did there
Yeah.
years ago, Harrison did.
the pictures, a lot of times easier to see.
Yeah.
This is all rug.
Something beautiful, that's
It's
for
all
sure.
rug, you don't even know it. So Renegades just redid their field up there. I watched
Okay, here's-
part of it in, it's something.
Here's a barn, which isn't too far away. Anyway, everything you see at West Point is our best customer of all time. Doubleday Field's been natural grass forever. We converted it to synthetic turf a year and a half ago. So now they're playing on synthetic turf. It's accepted at the college level. We're doing an awful lot of their competitors right now. So they can play in the spring.
Very nice.
Hey, down in Harrison did it on your field years ago. Just been done later.
Anything?
So how big are the fields today? Like, how big is the baseball field and how big is the new baseball field?
And I can leave with you some dimensions if you'd like, because I noticed that when I made this submittal, unless you printed it to scale, you didn't see the dimensions. How am I doing
You didn't break anything.
so far? The night's young.
Where you going, 300-foot outfield or 350?
It's a 300-foot outfield down the line. Fenway's 310 to left and 302 to right.
Gonna hurt these high school kids' stats with that kind of thing.
Well, center field,
Just wanted to go
we're
pro,
looking
what
at
are you
about 340.
That's a normal field for Little League
It's
baseball.
it's a normal high school
Normal high
field.
school field.
No-
That's
Normal high
exactly what
school
it is.
field. I do have some supplementary drawings that have dimensions on there for both the baseball field and soccer. So, like I say, 300 down the line, 335 to center, 45 feet to the backstop
All right, yeah.
behind home.
You increased it 20 feet, yeah, it's usually 25 feet, but you made 20.
Softball's always 25.
Softball.
25
Little
for
league is
baseball,
25.
yes. For baseball, 45 is a good
I
distance.
know.
Good distance.
So am I hearing that the new baseball field is approximately 25% larger than the existing?
No, it's very similar to your
Oh, it's
existing.
about the same footprint?
Yes, almost.
Okay.
We've shifted it,
Mhm. In which direction?
and we've shifted it more toward 22. Well, let me see if I can show you that.
And why did you shift it?
Because, this isn't right. Because the bank drops off right behind the baseline here. So you can see there's the existing, and we haven't shifted it a great deal. But this bank drops right off. And we want to add dugouts. Right now, it's just open. And we wanted to put a batting cage there and a bullpen. So because that dropped off, we had room to shift it up this way. That's where your pedestrian bridge is.
Yes.
So, we wanted to take advantage of that space, but the distance down the line is the same.
And what about the athletic field?
The athletic field is sized, and it's right where they currently have a grass field.
Mhm.
It's sized to accommodate both football and soccer.
You're still gonna leave the track, yeah, the track around the outside on that field over there, the athletic field, because they got a track that goes around there.
That's up above.
Yeah, that's on the other side.
That. The track's there.
Right.
We're working down here.
Right, yep, yeah, I know, the ball field's on the left, right.
Yep.
Track's-
And then this field is here.
Right.
So they're immediately adjacent to each other.
Okay.
And the baseball field's a little bit larger in overall square footage, but this is sized for soccer with a buffer.
And that's gonna run east,
Optimum size.
that's gonna run east and west.
It is. The baseball field orientation is ideal. The field orientation is a little less than ideal. I don't think you're expecting to have an awful lot of spectators. It's more about spectators with the orientation of the field. And we've built fields in every orientation there is.
What about lighting?
No lighting.
No
Do
lighting.
you not know, like, it's
Our-
not gonna
our
expand
other-
in those, in that?
Our
regard?
other turf field has lighting.
Okay. And you, I'm sorry, Karen, you should continue if you got more, because I have
Okay.
a few.
Could you just speak about the basin that you mentioned, what the history of that basin is, or is it naturally created, or it was created?
It is naturally created, but I think the topography would show it better, and this is a bigger drawing. This is a normal crown field, meaning it goes like that, picks up water, brings it down here, brings it across, as you can see, and there's they call them a French drain. It's open stone, pipe in the stone, and all the water from here is collected, comes over to here, and then goes over the hill. But an awful lot of this, right now, is also sheet draining over that hill, and it goes into this basin. It is a mowable basin. It is not, there's no wetland there, as I said. So if that was a wetland area, we would have to calculate to make sure we weren't putting less water there. We want to maintain it. In this case, less water is better. We'll do our water quality by infiltration.
Mhm. Yeah, that was gonna be my next
Part of our
question,
sweat.
was whether you had, turtle concerns at the site?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, you checked with DEC?
We do put a thing out to the DEC and notify them.
But you haven't heard back yet?
We have not heard back
Okay,
for sure, but I'll mention it to Mabel's our stormwater specialist,
okay.
and I'll make sure she asks
Yeah.
that question.
I'm sure you will have to resolve it as part of your general permit coverage anyway, so.
Yes.
I don't have any other questions right now.
Yeah, so I think, if you do this as much as you say you do, then you're familiar with the notion that there are often environmental concerns raised with respect to the artificial product as well. So I would suggest that you, when you submit formally, that there be an expanded EAF, and that issues like, and again, I know there's two sides of this equation, but that's why I want to check all these boxes, right? Whether there are associated contaminant runoff issues associated with whatever product you're using, those kinds of things. I'm sure you've got that information. I'm sure you've had to review it before boards in the past. So just make sure that we have all that information so we can do the proper secret review as well. Oh, and I do, one other thing. I thank you for mentioning that you'll submit both, because I think you, otherwise, even though you plan on doing it in phases, we might run into a segmentation issue. Again, I understand that might be an arguable point, but I think it will be useful if you do at least indicate the future of that athletic field as well.
I think on what you saw submitted, it said proposed layout E. That means there was an A, B, C, D
Right,
ahead of it.
right.
They selected E because it gives them two field. We were trying to put a lot in the outfield and it just wasn't a great configuration. But it also was probably a little more expensive than A, B, C, or
Yeah.
D. So that's why we talked about phasing.
Sure, yeah.
We have had some recently good information from the EPA. So
Yeah, no,
I feel good about I feel great about the product we're recommending
Right.
here. It is not a punctured back, so everything's contained.
Yeah, yeah, no, I know there's been a lot of developments and improvements in that technology too, and as I said, we just want to make sure that from our perspective in the secret review, we're able to say exactly that, right? That-
Yeah.
And again, because there's ultimately two fields that we're talking about, that, impacts obviously have to
Yes,
be
yeah.
anticipated,
And-
but,
To your point, and I'll point out, the turf here will be slightly different than the one up here.
right,
Here you're playing baseball, here you're playing sports where there's head contact and other things, football and soccer. So there's different safety concerns here than on
Right.
baseball. But
Great.
both are using the same manufacturer, same fiber types,
yeah,
slightly different infills, which is where the focus usually is on the infill.
yeah.
Even though I mentioned the fiber degrades earlier, the safety concerns
Yeah,
have
The
always
layering.
been around the infill.
yeah,
And so far, New York State, upstate, let me put it that way, absolutely no issues at all, with it being well received.
Yeah, and we would like to be copied to some extent on the DEC correspondence.
And as an MS4,
Mm-hmm.
how do we proceed here? My understanding was you were a newly deemed MS4 here in
Yeah,
February?
I'm not
Yeah.
actually sure when it happened, but yeah, I see your point.
yeah.
That's why I was asking about next steps.
Yes.
We're ready, we just
Uh-huh.
wanna know where to go and how to do it, I guess.
Sure, I think once you make a formal submission to the planning board, then your materials will go to our engineer at La Bella. Her name is Sarah Drury, and the engineering review will begin at the same time as the planning review, and we can go forward from there.
Okay. We've worked with Labella before. I don't know her, but glad to
Wonderful.
make the submission and answer questions offline, whatever they want to do.
Yeah, sure.
Because there's an awful lot of times that there's little subtleties and things that we can accommodate if she has something that's of concern for her.
Sure, yeah, the
all
point
gonna
that
be-
he's trying to make is, in every circumstance in front of the board, it's probably best for the board to say, yes, it's okay that we communicate outside of the board proceedings if it's necessary. I mean, at this point, it's clearly not necessary, but should we
You
get
mean
to
for
the point
consult-
where,
right, yeah.
we should get to the point where, there needs to be some discussion, hash it out a little.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, otherwise it gets.
Especially if you're paying for it.
Definitely.
Or we're paying for it.
Okay, you're good to go.
Vivian, don't get that wrong in the minutes, by
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah, so go ahead and submit your site plan application, and we look forward to working with you down the future.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Great. You close that.
Thank you for your attention.
You don't like the soundtrack?
No, very
If you
distracting.
wanted me to, didn't bother anyone, but.
Okay, let's get this out of the way here now. Bear with me for a second. Okay. Okay, next on the agenda, we have '15 Memorial. And this is a continued public hearing.
This is the latest survey.
She puts it, I'll just pass it down. Thank you. We just pass it down to Joe.
Okay, pass that,
It's for-
pass that one, Joe, please. David.
What is it?
Joe.
Hello again, Mary Langen, Architects. May I use the memos that we received and respond to the points on that? Or would you like me to read?
I mean, I think just if there's anything that's changed from the
Yes,
last
there
time
are
you
some
submitted.
things, but- yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
maybe start with that. and
Yeah,
then-
it's mostly in response to the Labella letter and then Sarah's letter, okay? There's a few things in the Labella I just want to clear up, and that has to do with the hotel in and of itself. So in the memo, it does talk about it, it was historically used as a single-family residence, but it was on record with the tax records as a two-family residence.
Okay.
And then the applicant hopes to convert into a 7-room hotel. It's listed as 8. And you could just go to the plan. And just to clarify that, so it's very clear, it's a 4-suite hotel, and they will be rented as suites. Suite A, which is the accessible suite, it has 2 rooms and can take 4 occupants, but this is rented as 1 suite in its entirety. So whether or not you're using this room for occupants, you're still renting the entire suite, and that's how the entire floor plan works for this. Suite B is a 2-occupant, so 1 room. So on the first floor, to recap, we have 1, 2, 3 rooms. And then on the second floor, we have Suite C, which is a 2-occupant room, the bigger room of the suite. And then the secondary room, C2, is less than 120 square feet, so it is 1 occupant. Suite D is 2 rooms, 2 occupants per room. So the total occupancy is 13, okay? So we move back there. Okay, so in response to the memo we received on the 7th, the first point to review was the refuse. Refuse will be disposed of at the Lamort Building over at 7 Memorial. The planning board will discuss if this is acceptable, but I believe,
I can't hear a word you're saying.
oh, I'm sorry. The first point is the refuse, which will be disposed of at the Lamort Building at 7 Memorial. Dave, would you like to?
Yeah, I just, Vinnie Lamort is here just to verify
Yeah,
our
we're
arrangement.
gonna go into an agreement, we're gonna share my unit that I have right now.
What was that, Ben?
We're coming into agreement that he's gonna share my dumpster that I have currently right now at the current location.
Okay, that's Vinnie Lamort. Vivian.
Yeah,
Got that?
Vinnie Lamort, yeah.
Sorry, where is the Lamort building relative to this building?
So the Lamort Building is, if this is the village, a parking lot here, it's over here.
Okay. And just remind me, how did we say the refuse would get from 15 Memorial to the Lamort building?
Somebody's gonna carry it. It's about, I think it's maybe 100 feet. You know, that's where the access way will be to the village side of the property.
Mhm.
So they'll walk over, the cleaning folks will
Cleaning
take
folks.
it, and, yep.
Okay.
The next point addresses the lighting detail by vendor and photometric plan. We have revised the plan now such that we were showing lighting along this area here. We are now proposing to do pathway lighting in this existing rear yard. And we have an example of that here, so they would be temporary solar type lighting, not anything on post or anything that's a high density output. Regarding the landscaping plan, we have made some additions here, which I'll talk you through. We know that we are on Memorial here, there's an existing lawn at the front of the house. We are proposing to put a picket fence, very similar to what's at the Station Inn, along this upper, it's raised up from the sidewalk level, and planting material very similar to what is at Station Inn. I have photographs of that I'll show you.
Which are, they're just shrubs or?
Yes,
I
what's
think
there now?
I think there are azaleas. I think I took a picture of it. I can figure it out.
So here we're showing you, it's this type of low shrubbery, the picket fence. This is the summertime photo of, the flowers that they use. This is the fall. And then there's also some other plantings on the property. So very much in keeping with what's there now. Regarding the other landscaping details, we have added where we are proposing to put arborvitae, fast-growing evergreens here along the property line with 19 Memorial. We would like to do some screening, perhaps some boxwoods or other along where the brick building is on the other property line. And then there is an existing tree at this point of the property that is it's not doing well, so we are proposing to take that down. We have a photo of that as well. So on the existing site, I could go there. So this is the village parking lot back in here. This is a large tree that will come down, the proposal, and then this shed will also come down. The plantings in the front of the building will remain as is, as you can see here. Okay. And then these are photos of the rear yard, which we're proposing to maintain as a rear yard at this point. There was discussion about it as an amenity space. It's a yard at this point. Okay, at a prior meeting, a parking survey for the parking areas for the Station Inn was requested to understand the parking demand. that might be expected at the site and its influence on the access across the neighboring party. And I believe Dave has some data, some statistics regarding the parking need and what's been surveyed for the use for Station Inn.
Yes. So we've provided the board with our statistics which come off our hospitality management program called Cloud Beds. And it does, so we did a run of our occupancy rates for 2023, and they range from 29% up to 49%. We never hit over 50%. This year to date, we're at 33% overall, January through June, and the occupancy on weekend days is 42%. For last year, we were at 46% overall and 57% on the weekend days. So that's kind of, so that you extrapolate that to, that was based on 12 rooms. And so if you take the number of suites here, the 4 suites, we anticipate that on average, there'll be 2 suites occupied per day. Now, sometimes there's, we're full, sometimes we're empty, but overall, that's gonna be the average. We also, Emma Carlson's here, who's been our inn manager for the last year and a half. She can speak to the, we do have a certain number of people who come from the trail. And Emma, you want to just mention
Sure,
what your
yeah.
statistics are for that?
Yep, so I included a question on our website that guests have to answer yes or no if they're hiking the Appalachian Trail. And when I ran that right before this meeting, it looked like about 10% of the occupants answered in the affirmative that they would be hiking the trail. So those people obviously aren't driving. Something else we were thinking about in terms of driving or not driving was the people who take the train, and we don't necessarily have any statistics on that, but based on the phone calls that I get every week, say of the number of occupants in the hotel that week, there's like 20 or 30, I get maybe 3-4 calls, people asking me for train times, asking if they could leave their bag with us when they take the train into the city or take the train back, so we did consider that as well.
The other important thing from understanding the demand on traffic and parking is from April 15th through November 15th, which are our peak, our occupancy is the highest during those months. The parking in the village is available for overnight, and a lot of guests use that. And so and we would anticipate that that's going to continue. Parking is always free on the weekends in Metro North lot, so that's another, on Saturday nights. So when the demand is going to be greatest for the off-street parking is during the November 15th through April 15th, which is our lowest occupancy rate. We're again around 33%. So the impact on the traffic and parking, and I know there's been some studies submitted about parking relative to regular hotels, which really is completely irrelevant to our situation. We're a contactless check-in hotel. We don't have deliveries coming in and out. We've got an off-site manager. We do everything by phone. We have housekeepers coming in, at the most once a day, and the on-site manager, the off-site manager will come in to check on things as well. Probably walk over, frankly, because she's checking all the other ones as well. So so that's kind of just a little bit of information about, and so we felt, based on all that was kind of the best we could do in terms of the survey. So.
Dave, do you have people parking in the CVS lot? Because that was the genesis of that question. Because originally you guys had said that you had that you reserved space in the CVS lot. Sorry, let me restate that, you lease space from the CVS owner, right? And that you have people that park there. And the point of requesting the parking demand survey was to determine, based on what you had said, that most people were taking the train, that nobody was using that parking. And
It's actually, we rent that space as sort of a safety measure. I mean, it's not used that much in the summertime, and in the wintertime, more so, for the Station Inn. So, but we rent about half the spaces to local people for their apartments, so we're not really using the full amount of those spaces. We could, I mean, we have month-to-month tenancies for those spaces, so.
so you lease it and then you sublease it, half
Yes.
of the spaces?
Yes, yep.
Just getting back to the inn, I think a couple important things just to put in perspective and emphasize are that this is a 4-suite inn, and the spaces are rented by suite. So the anticipation is that with any space that's rented, there may be one car that's associated with that rental. We're proposing 6 parking spaces, and based on the occupancy rates that Dave just cited, you'd expect 2, maybe up to 3 on average, of those suites to be occupied at any given time. Even in the event that you had a full occupancy, you'd still have 2 additional spaces in a very atypical situation of needing some kind of overflow, additional parking. So I
At
think
this
just
point,
based
I'm
on-
not questioning the number of spaces that you're providing. I'm questioning, or rather trying to get to the bottom of how many parking spaces are actually needed and its influence on crossing over this easement that is a big question right now. So, meaning like if there's a low demand for parking here, perhaps we should be considering other options that require less parking because it's not needed and thus perhaps not causing
Obviate the need for that crunch.
causing dissatisfaction of the neighbors.
Whether we needed 1 space or 6, we would still
Understood.
have that access.
Yes.
Yeah, we need 4, we're required to have.
So let's talk about the ADA requirement.
Yes,
So are you required to have ADA spaces
yes.
right by the house under any circumstance?
Yes, it has to be in proximity to
Yeah, so-
the ADA
If,
accessible.
but that's if you're providing generalized parking. If you were not providing any parking, you would not be required to provide ADA spaces right there. You'd be required to provide ADA spaces in the parking area that you're providing, correct? That's my understanding.
My understanding of the code as it relates to accessibility is that you need to get.
Could you speak a little louder, please? Can't hear a word you're saying.
You need to get an accessible space as close to the amenity as possible so you can have an accessible route. So if the suggestion is to take your accessible space and put it off-site somewhere, creating an accessible route from the accessible parking space to the amenity would become more of an undue challenge in somehow creating this.
All right, so
accessible
we've
route.
established that you need at least the ADA parking space.
Correct.
And how many do you have right now?
We
You
have one ADA parking space, so I should point out on this plan that we're showing here, this is the existing paved area, it's
Mhm.
shown on the survey as well, and then the hatched area shows where we would be extending the paved area to accommodate the new parking. So the ADA space is here, it will be painted with the symbol. The parking sign here will also call it out as that, we have a photograph of that. The accessible aisle compliant with the Village of Pawling requirement is here, and then the ADA ramp into the ADA entrance is here. And then the ADA route in the building, oops. Just want to get to the plan,
That's the last one.
Yep. So we are showing the accessible entrance here, the ramp in compliance with the 1 to 20 slope and accessible landings on either end to match the area here is relatively flat when you come off of that space. And then we've calculated the first floor level to that ramp to show compliance. You can then come in through the building. There is a 5-foot turning radius here into this room, and this room also has the ADA compliant bathroom.
Wonderful. So I mean, perhaps this needs to be explored further so that the board feels confident that ample parking is being supplied. But I just want to remind you that you are able to waive parking if you don't feel that we need all of these spaces for this. I mean, they would have to request a waiver, but I'm just saying, you know, some things to consider amongst all the concerns that are being
Yeah,
brought up.
and we do have the overflow in the CBS parking lot if it becomes an issue.
Right, I mean, we should confirm again with Dave that he is able to.
Well, I have I've got another year and a half on the lease. I don't know what the land, I assume he'll renew it. But, things can change and, I think we probably should have a discussion about the easement before we get into this, because I think there might be some things that come up that may help to clarify what this is, and because this is it's a 150-year-old easement that's been used vigorously in a B1 zone, and it was, as we'll present, it's a 12-foot easement. There's no doubt about it. It has to be by law. The 19 Memorial folks are required to have a 12-foot easement for their own parking, which they're, by the way, not complying with. But that's really, not my issue. But so I have concerns about basically it would kind of be devaluing the property to take away this easement that's been there for forever. And it's been used, there's a barn back there. I mean, a two-family house could have 20 occupants. I mean, you could have, it's a big house, and so to go from that to a 4-suite hotel, I don't get it, other than there may be some other reasons why the neighbor doesn't want cars at all to go through there. I have a sense that they're parking, I think, illegally on the different areas. They have a space that's.
So you get an opportunity, and we'll just.
Right after that.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry.
No,
He's accusing my client.
no, hold on,
No,
hold on, you'll get a chance.
You'll
to
get
talk.
an
Go ahead.
opportunity.
Parking illegally, I think that, there's the spaces that are required are 9 by 19, and they're not that big. And and they've been added. The tree was taken down, and you've got cars backed up. You've got 4 cars, two behind the other. And again, I really live and let live. I did not want this with a neighbor. I tried to reach out, and they want to try to eliminate this easement. And I don't think this is the context for that. This is we've got a 12-foot requirement that has to be adhered to by everybody, by this property. When the stone wall, I didn't realize this until after this challenge came up. I assumed that stone wall had been there forever. It looked like it was, it's kind of old looking, but actually what happened was Valerie Christie, who owned the property, my property before, she put a fence up. She got a building permit. It showed a 12-foot access way through that gate. She tells me that she couldn't find a wide enough for the type of fence that they were having. They didn't have a 12-footer, so they made it 10 feet or slightly less than 10 feet. And at that point, and a CO was issued. She was told she needed a survey. She got a survey. At some point after that, the stone wall was put up. Apparently without a building permit, we weren't able to find one. So it's there. It's not complying with the 12-foot requirement. I don't really care whether it stays there, but I don't want that to be used as a reason why I can't use my property. So we'll go for the variance, and whatever ends up happening, it shouldn't be the village's problem. Unless they want, again, whatever the village wants to do with that fence. I mean, I believe that they need a building permit and a CO because they obstructed my 12-foot access way. And they're putting in all sorts of additional parking after the 12-foot requirement was passed in 1972. So it's been in place for about 50 years. And it was adhered to. We have aerial photos that show the tree next to the property and one space pointing outwards towards Smith Street. There's at an earlier meeting, the applicant had indicated they had 3 parallel parking spaces, along the east side of the property on the stone wall. There isn't room for 3. There's garbage cans that they line up along from Smith Street, perpendicular to Smith Street, and there's 2 other cars that park there, not 3. In the pictures that they submitted, they show 3, but that's not possible. So they haven't actually represented that properly, and you know, the report that they submitted about there was a statement that the turn off from the driveway to Smith Street was a problem because the cars parking on Smith Street would block the ability for cars to come out of there and turn. And there's a picture, I don't know whose car it is, but it's illegally parked. And you can see the no parking sign. Do you have that up, Adam?
Yes, we do.
It's very clear. You're not allowed to park there. And the cars do not park there. I mean, I've driven in there now 100 times, and other than that picture, I've never seen a car parked there. So that was, I'm not sure why that was presented that way. And there's also a picture showing a very sort of crowded, like several cars that are parked. One of them is in the little space which is really partly a yard and is nowhere near 9 by 19. And then you've got the cars that are double parked, one behind the other, and then you've got one that's pulled out from the wall. As you can see from our maps, there's 9 feet for the parking space. That's the parking spaces that are parallel, and there's 12 feet for the balance of the driveway, and that's been that way since the. Yeah, Adam, go ahead, and you take, if you wouldn't mind, just going through the.
Yes, we just have some historical aerials just showing the historic use of the easement. We have the 2009, 2016, and 2020. You can see in each one the 2 parallel spaces that are there. Area that seems to historically have been used for trash cans.
Can you show some of that out here
And
so
then-
we can see it?
Sure. And then a 12-foot access driveway, which would be the access easement.
Dave, is that stone wall on your property or 19?
No, it's on the boundary, you know, it's within the boundary line, you know.
What do you mean, it's on?
It's on their
Oh,
property.
it's on
Yeah,
their
it's on their
property.
property.
And so are you saying, Dave, that, and I understand it sounds like you'll have something to say about that, but that is what created the constriction?
Yeah, and again, I didn't know this. I thought that wall, I didn't know why that a narrow opening like that had been created, but it was a neighborly accommodation. My lady had dogs and put up a fence, and then this neighbor went and put up a fence the same width. There was no like hostility to it. It was a neighborly accommodation, and you know, and when I realized that it was too narrow, I took the fence down. So I think they should take their fence down or take it down so that it's 12 feet. But in the meantime, you know, I'm gonna seek a variance, and, you know, whatever happens, happens. But I really, you know, that parking lot currently my parking lot can hold 5 cars. It's been there for 5 cars. So why would they, if it wasn't, you know, very rarely are we gonna use it for 5 cars, but that's evidence of the historical use of that. And these guys are loading up their parking area with extra cars. I don't know what the motives are, but and it's a 6-family apartment. This is a B1 zone. This is a business area. It's not like we're in the middle of Mayberry here. We've got, you know, it's anticipated that this kind of use would occur. I mean, this is a very relatively benign use. Exact building, I'm not expanding the footprint, you know, we're making it very spacious for the guests. And, you know, it just, they're required to have that access way. I don't understand why they would have any ability to stop that from happening, so.
And I just have one other question on, can you just, why there'll be no deliveries here?
No.
I mean, how, like.
Well, I mean,
how-
is it possible that an Amazon truck might?
No, I
come in?
understand that, but I'm
But
just
we
saying
don't-
in general,
we don't-
like, you're not having, there's no.
I'm gonna go,
linen
I'm gonna
cir-
talk about it.
Yeah,
Tell Joe
I just
now.
want, I'm
Yeah,
sure it's
Yeah.
true, I just
No,
wanted
it's a
to
good-
know.
So any kind of.
How do you operate with
Yeah,
that?
any kind of housekeeping or laundry service or anything that has to be done in that regard, they're gonna go over to 7, or they're gonna be able to just do it right in-house at 15. Any kind of like deliveries of supplies, like cleaning supplies, either I make a trip to Costco to go get that, and then I literally carry it inside, or we have Amazon delivered to 7, kind of on a subscription. It all lines up monthly, so there's maybe like 1 or 2 deliveries a week. They all come in together, and the housekeeping unpacks it, puts it away. So there's no like in and out daily.
And we're talking
deliveries or-
about either typical road-going vehicles like yours, right?
Yes.
Or it sounds like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like if it's an Amazon delivery, it's an Amazon van or something, either typical.
Yep, and I don't know if we'll change the location to the deliveries to 15,
Yeah.
or we'll keep it at 7, but if it's to 15, like, they'll probably just park in front
It's
and
pulling up
carry
to
it
the
up the
front door.
stairs and
Okay.
bring it
I'm
right up
assuming you
there.
get, I'm assuming the fuel truck stays right on Smith Street and drags the hose and,
No, they come on through the easement property, as they always have.
They come right through the easement
That's right,
property?
that's right.
And did we, I feel like we discussed this maybe at a prior meeting, but we can fight a fire there without getting through that, right?
So
think
I
we
met,
talked about that, right?
with the
Yeah.
fire chief this morning, along with one of the fire commissioners who's here, Glenn Carey, and they indicated that there would be no problem with a fire truck coming up in the village parking lot and coming in that way. It was very
Get
close.
that from the fire department.
Every
Yeah.
way does the fire chief.
It would be good to get that in writing
Yeah.
from the fire department.
Yep.
Fire chief.
Sure.
And also, if you could summarize your occupancy data, just as you did in writing, that would be helpful as well.
Happy to do that.
My car, you can't go that way, the truck here, it's easy sack.
Yeah, there were comments from our engineer about the fire access. Are you guys prepared to respond to those, or will you respond in writing?
Well, in terms of the aerial access, we would be within the required distance, based on what Dave just mentioned. The fire department's preference of coming up through, the village parking lot, that would be within the distance that's required for aerial access road.
And taking down that big tree is gonna,
Absolutely.
make that a lot
Right,
safer.
which it's a hazard anyway, yeah, it's gonna be taken down July 4th, so I don't know why.
It's the only way to get the truck to that building.
Yeah.
They're not getting it any other way.
And I'm familiar with that sign that you're talking about on Smith Street, and I've spoken to the person that are in violation.
Oh,
And,
okay, you knew who it was? Okay,
Yeah,
that's-
yeah,
great.
and if they're there after this meeting, they'll be, I'll pay them another visit, but hopefully that's under control.
Good.
Have you made any changes inside the building? Of course, the bathroom and the rooms, going from one room to another room,
We are still under variance application for that.
for that?
Yes.
And what type of variance are you applying for? An area variance or use variance?
That's an area variance, yeah.
That is an area variance?
Yep.
I thought that would be a use variance. Yeah, I thought an area variance would be dimensional issues, and this is a.
It is, I mean, we have less than, it's 100, the minimum would be 100.
I'm talking about
Well,
going
I-
from.
you know,
one-
I'll let your attorney answer
Yeah.
that question. I believe it's being treated.
My
as an area
concern is
variance.
walking from one bedroom to another bedroom to get to the bathroom.
But it's gonna be a family, Lou. I mean, we're talking about, these are not different guests coming in, these are people who
Well,
are.
isn't that the code violation?
Well, it's not a violation, it just requires, it would be if they did it without a variance, but
And I should say, I remember that ordinance specifically provides for variances to be issued.
Okay.
And it was passed to address overcrowding. If you read the background,
Yeah.
the reason why the variances are permitted is just this kind of situation. Because it would, having 3 people and probably a child for the most part, in a single suite with a very large bathroom, I mean, it is not, the statute's purpose is in no way being served by, but again, That's up to the ZBA.
Yeah,
They have to, you know.
And I don't wanna go too far here without my ZBA council hat on, which I will be in that role when this is already getting there. But it's a somewhat unusual provision in that it's a specifically provided for variance created by that local law. So it's got standards written into it. So
That's good. I have no objection to that.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, it's a bit of an
As long as everything
anomaly,
is
but
covered, that's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Sugar, I had one other question. Okay, no, that's all right.
Karen, you want to go over anything else before we ask for the? Okay, so as I stated earlier, this is a open public meeting. Does anybody from the anybody on the board have anything to say first? We're gonna turn it over. Okay, anybody want to speak, would you please stand and address yourself so we can get it into the record, please?
My name's Kenneth M. Stenby.
Ken?
I've not been before your board before on this matter. I represent the owners of 19. The clients are Tony and Rocco's brother in the back of the room. Tony was here and spoke to you about 60 days ago about his concerns about this alleged easement that runs through the property. And the day after, he spoke to me before he spoke to you, and he came and spoke. He was nervous as all get out, but he told me he got the message across to you that there was the issue with overcrowding and overuse of 15 as a hotel using using his property to get to Smith Street. So I was retained a day or two later, and I did some work, and I understood that the building inspector had said to the applicant that you have to file an application for an area variance because what everyone is calling an easement narrows at that stone wall, at that gap. And so that application was filed. But as I dug into this a little further, I can sit here and say to you with all confidence that two things. One is that the statute doesn't require a 12-foot wide easement, it requires 12-foot wide access. But there is no 12-foot wide easement on that property. And nobody is going to be able to show differently. And you've got some materials tonight. I'm not gonna discuss them because they're all in front of the ZBA. And if the ZBA will determine that. The materials you received tonight on the survey were delivered to you, the planning board. But as I understand by asking the secretary, a set of those materials has not been filed with the ZBA. The ZBA has exclusive jurisdiction on determining whether or not there is 12 foot of access. To argue that case here tonight does you a disservice, waste your time. And it distracts from the other important issues that you are bringing to the table as part of your consideration of this application. I don't know when we'll be in front of the ZBA. You're all invited, if you want to come and watch. Because then we can hear the story about how the stone wall got built. Who knows how it got built? Who knows? There's not a witness here who said, I put the cement blocks down. Nobody knows. But I know that there's no document that says that there is a 12-foot wide easement on that property, because there isn't. But that's the issue for the ZBA. And I'd ask you please to reserve on everything you heard tonight about the existence of that easement and the reasons why and the evil motives of my client that just don't want a hotel operating and going in and out over their yard, where they have a 6-family house, where they have a 6-family house rented, where the people who rent park there. So I appreciate that. I appreciate if you keep that in mind when you're considering this application. Until the ZBA comes back, you can't make a finding saying that that 12-foot easement exists. And The ZBA may say, you know what, I don't care if it's not 12 feet, maybe we'll make an area variance. But that's their job. That's a fact that we have to get done over there. And I wish what had been submitted tonight to you was submitted to them, and we'd have that hearing before we came here tonight. Because that's the way things should have been done, but they weren't. I don't know why, but they were not. But when I got involved in this, I wrote letters to try and get some information. Because what I did was I read all the minutes of this application before Anthony came and spoke. And I read the minutes, and I sent the board a letter. I send the letters out. I don't know if anyone reads them. My clients do, they pay for them. But this was April 18th, 2024. So at the end, I asked some questions, just so I would have some information. So I asked, was a unit change of use application filed with the Village of Pawling Building Department as part of this application? We filed it, we can't find it, but does anyone know if it was filed? Because it appears that that's a predicate to your ability to proceed in this application. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've asked that question, I didn't get an answer. And I'm not criticizing or faulting, this is the first time we've had an opportunity to talk to each other.
What's the question? Ken, what
I'm just quoting from my letter, but there is a code requirement that a change of use application be filed with the Village of Pawling Building Department before the planning board proceedings commence. Now, I'm sure that can be, if it's not filed, I'm sure it can be filed retroactively, and it's not an issue, but I just wanted to know the answer. The second question was, I confirmed in my letter, because I addressed it to this board and the ZBA, that in fact there was a variance application pertaining to this easement, access easement, pending before the ZBA. Now, the application that was made pertains only to that gap between the two stone walls, which is, depending on when you measure it, it's 10 feet here, it's smaller at the bottom, because the gaps are like a little bit of a V, because I went out and measured it, so I know what it is, it's 9.5 feet. And I don't know anything about how that stone wall came to be. I don't know. My clients don't know. It wasn't built in their lifetime either. So what I did bring to the attention of the ZBA was that there is no easement document that says, here is the easement area, it's 12 foot wide, here's where this boundary is, here's where this boundary is, there's 12 feet between them. It just doesn't exist. And so the question then, I wrote a letter to the building inspector saying, to the building inspector, don't you think we need to make a determination on the entire length of the alleged easement rather than just the gap? And the answer I got back was yes, and that's what the ZBA is going to do. So I can only tell you, I've only seen the application once saying that the variance sought over there is just the gap in that stone wall. But in response to my correspondence to building, the CEO, not the, well, same person, said that the ZBA was going to consider the entire length of the access easement.
So you're saying that there should be 12 feet?
Your statute says that in order for this lot to have access to Smith Street over my client's property, there has to be 12-foot wide access. I mean, the easement, I guess, could be 15, but you can't have it less than 12 feet, otherwise you don't have exactly 12 feet. And if you have it less than 12 feet, you have to get a variance, right? So if it's 11 feet, you have to get a variance. Now, what if you can't tell how wide it is at all? Because it doesn't say that on the easement document.
And the reason why I ask you that question is because on your client's property, they have two cars parked bumper to bumper.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have cars parked north and south.
I can answer that question.
And how wide is that?
Well, I've asked, what we did was, I didn't want to make this an anecdotal record, right? Oh, I was there, I walked, I saw this. When I was 12 years old, I saw that. We retained Mr. Mafia, who has studied the parking lot and is prepared to give in-depth, who can answer all of those questions better than I. When a lawyer knows to let somebody else do the talking, it's a good thing, time to shut up. So I think maybe that's what I'll do and introduce you to Mr. Mafia. There is only one other question that I do want to, one quick answer if you can tell me. When I read these minutes, it appeared that there was a question as to whether or not, an outstanding question in the January minutes, as to whether or not the CEO was going to make a determination if we were to treat this as a hotel use or a bed and breakfast use. That was in the minutes that you were waiting on that. Do you know if you ever got that? Because if you don't know which one it is, there's separate rules that apply, right? So you would want to know which one should be, and then I would imagine if the applicant didn't like the answer, he would take an appeal to the ZBA. That's why it's there. I didn't raise that. I just read it in your minutes. Somebody raised it. I think it was the applicant, actually.
Yeah, Dave.
Is that correct what I said? Do you have a recollection of it?
Yeah, Dave brought it up.
Okay, so if he brought it up, do you know whether or not it's been determined?
I'd have to look into the records.
Okay.
Well, but there was a letter, you wrote a letter saying it was determined to be a hotel, so we went on that basis.
I wrote a letter?
Mm-hmm. That was one of the earlier
I can't make a
letters.
determination for the building inspector.
That's why I assumed the building inspector had made the determination. Because they treated, when the response came back and when we had the combined applications, so.
Well, I'm not sure that that's the context that you are applying to my sentence, I'm not sure was the intent of the sentence. I write a description based on the subject matter that's delivered to me as part of a submittal. So I'm certainly not claiming to make an interpretation such as
No, I
that
know,
of the CEO.
I didn't assume you did.
So you did not get a response back from the CEO on your
I didn't.
inquiry to him on?
My understanding when I got your letter was that inquiry had been made, and that was a response. And then I think at a subsequent meeting, it was mentioned that all the building department issues had been looked at and resolved. So if that was a misunderstanding, then but it was, when I saw it's a hotel, I mean, we would have gone either way. I mean, we could have, but, because in the correspondence, it was stated, and that was at the point where we're applying for a 20-room, hotel. We were, anyway,
Okay, well, we'll have to get that cleared up.
Well, I'm just asking, because my client just doesn't want the extra traffic going through their property. They're not opposed to a hotel. They're not opposed to a use of that hotel if the CVS parking can accommodate it, or if there's sufficient off-street parking, as it sounded during Mr. Daniels' testimony, to handle this. We're not here to oppose the use. The problem is going through our parking lot. That's the problem. So, I asked the question only because I would think you would want to have had that determination made, or take the position you don't need it, one way or the other, but you would like to know which rules you're following. And that just seemed like an open question, so.
Did the applicant ever have an issue with traffic going through his property?
The applicant?
Your
my client.
client.
Well, yeah, Tony's here, he can listen to what I have to say and correct me if I'm wrong. I've walked the property. I've seen the ongoing construction, I've seen a lot of things on that property.
Prior to this?
Prior to this, that was a single family, that was occupied by a family. There were 1 or 2 cars that were neighbors, that were not all hours of the day. It was in the morning, out at night, people go to work, weekends.
But there was no issue with
Not at all.
those people going back and forth?
No, there wasn't, but there was no assertion of the existence of an easement in a specific dimension. It was just neighbors getting along, and the fact that there was 2 cars involved in the house that is now going to be turned into a hotel. And 2 cars where people go to work in the morning and come back at the end of the day. They're not in and out all day long. And it was 2 cars that was managed by the neighbors so as to not disrupt what was going on with my client's rental property. That's the history that we have prior to this acquisition of the property for this proposed development. So that's, if you could approximate something like that again, maybe there's a room to have a conversation. But in the end, right now, today, there is no easement that is 12 foot wide on that property.
Can I respond, because that's getting repeated over and over again, I'd like
And
to
it's up to
just.
the ZBA to determine whether or not that is the case, not this board. So I'm gonna stop for a second and
Yeah,
let
just-
Mr. Mafia speak to the traffic implications of what is proposed.
Actually, I would like to interrupt for a moment.
Yes, you
if It's
can.
okay. So I think at this point, the planning board should seek an interpretation from the CEO
Can I, Karen,
about whether
before-
this is a bed and breakfast or a hotel. Because I thought that the applicant had done that, but you thought that I was making that determination. The planning board cannot make that determination. It's not in our position to do that. So
But what
if there's a
nobody-
question being raised, we need to answer the question and have that resolved.
I believe the definition of bed and breakfast though states that the owner's on premise
Yeah.
sleeping in the.
Fair, but the point is, it's not for the planning
No, no,
board to make that
I think
determination
that,
at this point.
let me, if I may, and Dave, maybe some of what I'm about to say could influence your response. There's a few things I want to address in what we've heard. First of all, I think that probably was the distinction and the understanding. That doesn't mean necessarily that we shouldn't get that from the CEO. There's a couple of things in what Mr. Stenger said that I just want to address for the board. I think first of all, Mr. Stenger is correct. I don't think anybody else has disagreed with this. You are not a judicial board or a quasi-judicial board. You cannot determine whether or not this easement exists or the extent to which it exists. You can only act on the plan that's submitted. I think it is incorrect to say that the planning board cannot review or even take action on this application once you are satisfied that your planning review has been sufficient. Because I think, and I'm not saying this is the way the board would go. The board will have discretion whether to approve or deny or modify anything about the application. But I do believe you would have the authority to approve or make a decision on this. If you approved, it would be subject to the appropriate variance being received from the ZBA. So I think it's incorrect to say that you can't review it. I do think the applicant has to make a judgment, how much review they want to do before the planning board until they get the ZBA, but that's their call. And you can review it, you're reviewing it for its planning standards and its compliance in those regards. And then the other thing, let me just see if there's one other thing. No, I guess, yeah, that was it. So Dave, maybe that influences what you're gonna say, but go ahead.
That's helpful. So this is reversed. Black is white here in terms of what Mr. Stenger said. You do not, nobody in the village is required to or should be making a determination about the width of my easement. It's not, what we have here is, we sought a variance from a statute that requires 12 feet. And we're that, and the planning board can, when a statute or local law is unambiguous, can read it and say, this is what it is. It's a 12-foot requirement. It's been there for decades. The access, you can see it on the map, you can see it superimposed, and they have no right to block it. So we have a 12-foot access, we meet the requirement. We don't need a 12-foot easement under that statute. We need a 12-foot access lane, which is what we have. They cannot block it. If they block it, they're violating the law, and end of story. There's no need to get into any of this. The variance I applied for, I didn't go to the CEO about the variance. I read it and I wanted to, do things right and just make sure that everything was clear. And at the time I didn't realize the stone wall, and I do have an affidavit that makes it very clear that the stone wall was built after the fence was. And Mary Langdon went through the building inspector's records, and there's no building permit for the stone wall that was built. So it's there in violation. It's an obstruction, but again, we can get an easement, and I just. So it is within your jurisdiction. And I don't think that, I think this is just things that are getting just sort of moved out of kilter completely. And
I do remember actually the other thing I was going to say. I think Mr. Stenger is correct based on my review of the record that there's not a mapped easement associated with this easement, but I do want to make clear that an easement exists, and it's a written easement, and it's in the chain of title, and it is, an easement may be, the dimensions of an easement may be established by use. And again, this is not the forum here to determine whether that's been established.
In fact, it's black letter law. I found half a dozen cases, they all say the same thing. When there's a property dispute, this is the problem. This is what Mr. Stenger is doing. He's litigating a property dispute in front of you. It's not appropriate. And it's very clear that a property dispute gets resolved in court. You guys are just, I have two surveyors showing you this easement. I have an engineer showing you the 12-foot access way. If somebody can just come in and say, well, no, you don't have that, and so I'm going to stop your project, I'm going to stop your application, nothing would ever get done. I mean, it would be using that as a sword. It's a very simple thing that you have to decide. Is there a 12-foot access way requirement under 9822F or not? And does that apply to 19 Memorial as well as 15 Memorial or not? I mean, I was a little caught off guard with the room thing, Karen, so I had no problem getting an interpretation. I was just positive that it had been done, and it's fine. These things happen, but that's, I think we should get that. If I had known, I would have, when Mr. Stenger was.
Close that loop.
Well, he was writing and asking those questions, and I had understood. So anyway, I'm not going to belabor that, but, and if I could just go through my notes for a minute, just to make sure that I'm capturing everything I wanted to say. And I think Adam may have touched on it, but I just want to be clear that the line that's shown on the survey that shows where that 120 feet is, it cuts diagonally right through the driveway, okay? There's no other place on this property where access can be provided as is required under the easement. We submitted a picture showing there's 12 steps to get up to the sidewalk, and then it continues to go up. So off of Smith Street, there's just no practical way. You can't be more than 70 feet. You can't be within 70 feet of Memorial Avenue under the local law, and then after that, there's the house. So there's no, and they have, and under the easement, they have the right to decide where it's located. So, but it's only within that driveway, which is 21 feet, and there's cars that have been historically parked along the eastern boundary, and there's 12 feet left. So if they, what would the issue be for the board to, to deny it, even though legally they have to maintain that access? And I do have the right to pass through it. So it's 12 feet, and I have the right to pass through it. That's the end of the story as far as you guys are concerned. I mean, if he wants to go to court and talk about width and things like that, that's have at it. But for purposes of this hearing, this is just a way of stopping my project. And it's or having me extinguish a right of way, which is I don't. Again, I have no problem with a waiver if the board feels, and I do feel that the parking needs are much less than what we're providing. But I don't want to have some condition imposed or something where I'm not able to use my property to access. I mean, that parking lot is there, it's been there forever, and I wouldn't want a condition that I can't go in and out of there, because it's a half acre, it's one of the biggest acres in the center of the village, and I'm gonna be landlocked effectively. So Not
I
right.
just want to comment before, Mr. Mafia, sir, is that your name?
Matthew, yes.
Yeah, I'm a pretty simple guy, and I don't want to litigate this, as Dave had mentioned. Cars were passing back and forth for how many years, and it didn't seem to be an issue?
150.
150 years?
Have we had cars that long?
No, they had teams of horses and vehicles of all kinds, which the
Yeah,
easement.
I think you know my point. You know,
I think my point is, it's just density, sir, sorry.
There's ample parking. Cars have been passing through that easement for 20 years. We'll bring it down to 20 with no issue. I'm having a hard time thinking about why this is such a problem. The design of the building is great. They're gonna take care of the interior. I don't really have a problem with this, I'm gonna be honest with you. Karen, Joe, you can correct me, Karen, you can correct me. I think this is just ridiculous the way this is going.
Name Mr. Mafia now be heard?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Maybe he can address some of your issues.
Yeah.
Is it okay
Can
if
I
put
just
some-
take that one off? And Mr. Mafia, when you do this, if you can, face it so the audience can see as best everyone can see it. And speak loud enough for everyone in the room to hear you.
If there are members of the public that, I think the board has to see it, so if there are members of the public that want to see it, please feel free to get
That's
closer.
good, too.
Yeah,
No microphones, it's hard to.
yeah, no, I understand, yeah.
Good evening, my name is Stephen Maffia. I'm a licensed professional engineer in New York State. I've been licensed and working in the traffic engineering field for over 40 years. I've done hundreds of traffic impact studies, parking studies, access evaluations, safety studies, and so on. I've also done quite a bit of work in peer review, where I look at traffic studies and parking evaluations, safety studies by other engineers and architects over the years. I work primarily in the Hudson Valley area, from Westchester County all the way up to Dutchess and Columbia counties, on the other side of the river from Rockland all the way up to Sullivan County. I'm quite familiar with Pawling. I have visited the site a number of times and have done some work with the owner at 19 Memorial Avenue in terms of the measurements that were taken in his backyard. Just to give you some orientation, at the bottom of this drawing on the top is Memorial Avenue. Smith Street is on the left. 19 Memorial is in this corner, and 15 is to the east. This is basically the backyard of 19 Memorial Avenue, where measurements were taken from the access off of Smith Street, where the opening between the walls and Smith Street is 18 feet 5 inches, and the wall separating the two properties, where the opening at the bottom of the wall is 9 feet 6 inches, and the subject of the variance for the access. I would just take a step back and talk about the access and tell you that, in my opinion, what you have on record is the description of basically a permission to use the property at 19 Memorial Avenue to gain access from Smith Street to 15 Memorial Avenue. In all of the documents that I've looked at, and in my professional opinion, there is no specifically identified easement which would have meets and bounds and descriptions that say starting at a certain point and running a certain distance at a certain orientation. That doesn't exist. So what we're looking at, though, is, can you provide a 12-foot access as opposed to a 12-foot easement? Throw the fact of the easement and the thought of an easement out for now, and let's look at whether or not you can get the 12-foot access, a driveway that's 12 feet wide, that can exist in the property on 19 Memorial Avenue. The quick answer to that is no, you can't. Because what we have here, in about the 80-foot distance from Smith Street to the property line between the two properties, is about half of that distance where parked cars on one side and the walkway around the entrance to the building on 19 Memorial ranges between 10 feet and 11 feet. So in this space of about, in this distance of about 40 feet, there is less than the requirement that you would need for a 12-foot access.
Those are parking spaces associated with the use at 19 Memorial.
These
though,
are
right?
parking spaces associated with
And
19
if
Memorial.
they-
And in the description of that, there's two spaces, and there's little circles with a P in it that shows where the parking spaces are located on the 19 Memorial. There's two at the back in this little cutout. There's two spaces along the wall. And as was mentioned, in front of that is an area where trash and recycling receptacles are placed. And then there's a double or a row, 2 rows of tandem parking where one space, as I think the chairman mentioned, is bumper to bumper.
And are those parking spaces at the top that constrict that width?
This here?
No, the two there.
Well, these two, if you assume that they're 19 feet long by 9 feet wide, yes, that 9 feet and leaves only 10 feet at one end between the space and the walkway and 11 feet at the other.
Are those parking spaces part of an approved site plan, or are they just, that's where cars park? Do you know what I mean?
As far as I know, this is where cars park.
There's no site plan, we couldn't find one.
Right. Okay, go ahead. What other constrictions to that 12 feet?
Again, in mentioning what we know already as the constriction at the wall, where the opening is only 9 feet 6 inches.
Also on 19 Memorial's property,
Yes.
right? So for what it's worth, I would just note, and again, I do think we might be beyond the planning board's purview here. It's a public hearing. Everybody's going to be heard. What I think the applicant might say in response to that is that if there's a restriction, the restriction's been created by your client.
Are you talking about the wall?
I'm talking about the wall, I'm talking about the 40-foot constriction where those two cars park generally.
And I would just add, that you're also admitting that you're violating 9822. I mean, you're subject to it too. How do you square that with, excuse me?
Just let my client, my expert, get his testimony out before he just closes.
That's fine, that's fine. Go ahead.
So, basically, to show what that looks like in real time, these are the two parking spaces that I mentioned that are at, on the left as you're driving into this, the site from Smith Street. And this is the front end of one of the tandem parking space vehicles that are parked. And in between, you can see there's an opening that just barely allows a small compact vehicle. This is a Honda. So in no way is there a 12-foot wide access. Now, I agree that this is something that's been utilized by the residents at 15 Memorial. And yes, they've been going back and forth there for a number of years, but it's a single-family home with a few cars. It's not a hotel that has the potential to have more traffic than just a few cars in the morning and a few cars in the afternoon on their way to and from work. There's guests who are showing up, whether or not they park here or somewhere else. It doesn't eliminate them from wanting to be in that parking lot. Certainly, you would expect that most guests would prefer to park as close to the entrance to the inn or hotel that they're staying at, and not have to walk with luggage and whatnot any significant distances. So if on-site parking is available, I think that check-in would take place with the vehicle driving to that lot and not parking somewhere else off-site. That and potential for there to be delivery trucks, depending on whether it's delivered somewhere else and carried in, or whether there's a UPS or an Amazon truck that comes through this access. Again, it's even tight. It's tight for a Honda. What would this look like if this were an Amazon van, one of the larger vans, or a UPS truck making a delivery? It's just practically not a doable viable access.
But that's your applicant's property, that's your applicant's property, right?
That's right.
So actually, you're restricting the delivery to get to 15 Memorial.
It's a fact of what's there.
It's
So
approximately it's 10
if
feet.
the applicant is
No, client,
required,
sorry.
if the applicant is required to provide, or be able to provide a 12-foot access, you can't do that.
Well, you can't do either.
They don't need it.
Well, and arguably, he can't do it because people using your client's property are preventing that from happening. Again, I'm not saying anything is dispositive, but I mean, that's what you're saying, right? I mean,
That's where they park.
the use of your client's property is restricting the width of that access.
Right. That's the point I want to get.
Right, exactly.
And do you have an opinion on the demand? There's obviously been representations made by the applicant about the demand for parking that the hotel will actually have in terms of its general occupancy rates and things like that. Do you have an opinion on, because I note your comment, and it's a reasonable one, that it has been used in the past as I think a two-family. I'm wondering if you have an opinion about what the actual likely increase in parking demand would be for a hotel of this sort. In other words, it's not a Marriott, right? It's a
No.
4-suite.
Well, when I looked at it, was an 8-room hotel is what it was described to me as. And according to the code, it would require 1 parking space per room. And so it would need 8 parking spaces. Whether or not that's the number of parking spaces. As far as the trips are concerned, the ITE Institute of Transportation Engineers has data on trip generation from hotels. And hotel use would generate, over the course of the day, just under 30 trips on a daily basis, whereas a single-family house generates 10.
But the trip generation is based on a particular land use code, right?
Yes.
And that land use code, they do maybe you could talk a little bit about this, right? They do a survey of several different hotels, and I think that land use code has a unique definition that describes a hotel that is, on average, much larger than the one that's being proposed here. So I'm not sure that it's appropriate to apply that average rate for parking, or, well, I guess we're not talking about parking, you're talking about the trip generation, but even for the trip generation to this use that is so much fewer in hotel units, keys.
It's 8, is what I looked at. I'm hearing that it's only 4 suites, but I don't know whether that is.
But I'm just saying, if the survey by ITE for trip generation is based on hotels of at least 80 keys on average, and ours has, you thought it was 8, fair, you didn't have the right information. The point is, that's a pretty big difference, right? So, I mean, 30 trips out of even an 8-unit hotel seems highly unlikely.
The range of hotel sizes may average 80, but there is some data for smaller units at the lower end of the curve.
Right, that's the 30 percentile, right? So they usually have like a 30th percentile or something like that, and then an 85th percentile.
No, that's for other measurements.
Okay, so that's for other measurements, but I mean, there's a graph and it gives the survey, right?
Yeah,
You got all the points, right? So we're not like average here. We're
hotels.
Less than average, right?
And
So
they'll tell us that the average hotel. I don't have the actual sheet from the document handy, but let's say that the average hotel room that they studied, the average number of rooms in a hotel was 120 or something like that. What I'm saying is that at the lower end of that, while that's the average, there are hotels with fewer rooms, 20 rooms, 15, 20, 30 rooms, something like that. So you can extrapolate data from the curve that's created by that line to a smaller unit, and it's small. It's fewer trips. And it's not like we're saying that, oh, the lowest number we have in our data is 30 rooms, so we're going to take that number and apply it to the 8-room hotel. The 8-room hotel can be found along an extension of the curve at the lower end, and you get lower traffic numbers. So again, on a daily basis, using that extrapolated number, it's about 30 trips, a little under 30. And on an hourly basis, it depends. You have staff that show up in a typical hotel. I'm hearing that may not be the case here. I don't know how they would operate it without some staff on
We just
site.
told you how we operate it. I mean, this is.
And I would like to just continue by saying that the peak hour trip generation is certainly gonna be, in terms of what's on 19 Memorial, is gonna be a higher volume than the 1 or 2 trips that go in and out during the peak hour. Heading to work in the morning, as Ken said, or coming back from work in the evening, 1 or 2 trips in those peak hours. And we're looking at not only an increase in trips during the peak hour, maybe 10 to 15 trips in an hour. And it may not sound like a lot, but when we're talking about crossing over the backyard of an adjacent property, that's a significant increase. And that takes place when it's check-in in the morning. You have people who are maybe staying there who are visiting or going down to the city on the train or whatever. So there's potential for there to be activity, not just at the peak hours, but midday, mid-afternoon, later on in the evening when people hop in the car to go out to dinner after they get back to the hotel. So, it's not just a single-family home type of trip generation where it's peak hour and peak hour PM. Very little, if anything, in the middle of the day. It's changing to something that's got activity morning, afternoon, evening, and sometimes later on at night.
But what is the understood peak hour for the hotel, for a hotel? Is it AM, is it the same as commuter AM and commuter PM?
It's the same as commuter AM. It's not the same in the PM. It's different in the PM. The hotels tend to have a slightly higher late afternoon because it's check-in time basically, and that's when people show up to get their rooms. Usually just before in the morning, the checkout time is slightly after it, but there's also trips associated with staff and deliveries and things like that take place in the morning.
Well, yeah, I would understand that there would be those associated trips, but I guess I'm not clear that it seems like the peak hour for the hotel in the AM would be at checkout. Right, so that's not the same as the commuter AM.
It's close. It's earlier because there are trips associated with staff and
Well, so the staff,
some other people who are staying there.
The staff is not going to be using a vehicle
In the parking lot.
in the parking lot.
I mean, I would think it would actually be more like something like noon to 3, right? You've got check-in times and you've got check-out times, more or less. I mean, I don't want to speak for the applicant.
And that's certainly possible, but that supports my contention that there's going to be activity at times during the day and throughout the day that doesn't exist today, middle of the day, late afternoon.
But the pertinent difference in demand would be the difference between a historical 2-family residential use and a 7-room
Limited service.
remote entry hotel. Right? I mean, so in other words,
I guess I would ask the question, is it always gonna be that? It could
Well-
end up being an 8-room hotel that has a manager and staff.
Well, we'll have to deal with that.
No, it can't.
When that time
Yeah.
comes.
They're not
We'll have-
looking for
yeah.
approval for that, you know.
Yeah.
Could I
I know they're not asking for that,
I think there's
but I'm
other
just
members of
saying
the
it's-
public.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
And I'd like to reserve the right to ask some questions of Mr. Mafia after the public has spoken, if that's okay, and maybe to address some of the other.
I don't have any problem with that, so we'll open up to the general public. Glenn?
Yeah, I wonder if you could do me a favor. Could you go back to the previous display you had? Because I think this is kind of important.
Just give me 1 second, Glenn. Anybody who comes up and speak, would you, full name and address, please?
Glenn Carey, 36 Coulter Avenue, Pawling. I'm gonna speak first to the history of the building. I'm a lifelong resident. I spent a lot of time on Memorial Avenue and Smith Street over the years. And it isn't until recently that the parking that's double parking, back to back, came into being. That was not always there. There was a tree on that side of the building at one point in time when I was younger.
Can you just show us where you mean?
Sure.
I think he's talking about this area.
I'm talking about, yeah. I'm talking about this area here. And with all due respect, I find this to be somewhat convenient, the way the picture is taken, and I'm gonna just turn it so that the public can see it, if you don't mind. This infinity, this white infinity, is conveniently pulled out further to create this hardship in this visual. This infinity can definitely go back further. It's chosen to be pulled out this way to make this tighter here, from a visual perspective. And I'm not even sure that the property owner ever got approval to put double parking in. And I would hope that the village would never have approved double parking, because it looks horrible when you drive down Smith Street. And years ago, the people that lived in this building when I was young were mostly widows, and they didn't drive. So there weren't all these cars here. And I do remember Bill Finn owned the house over here. And it was a two-family, because I knew people that lived upstairs in the apartment. And they did go back and forth through this area to access the property. This is not new. This has always been like this. This has been added, this parking here. I mean, this car back here is kind of amazing. I mean, you look at it here in this spot here where they have it. I would think it's probably even hard for these people to turn around. But these people to park here, they have to come back here and turn around if they want to get out. They're not, these cars, I've seen them, they're facing, heading out. So it wasn't a hardship for them to go through here to turn around and come back and park it this way, like that vehicle's parked. The cars can still get through. I mean, this is being made out to seem like this is creating a hardship for the property at 19. It's not. This was always this way. This is not new. And it's somewhat disturbing that they're trying to put this obstacle up onto somebody. And this is, I'm going to transition now to the inn itself. You know, I'm going to speak about the inn and what value that brings to the community. And, you know, Dave Daniels has made an investment in this community for a need for overnight housing for people that visit Pawling. We didn't have it before. We had the Pawling Inn, which was out on West Main Street, that unfortunately is no longer an inn. So how fortunate we are to have it. And he wants to expand it because there is a need. And the one thing Dave does is he does things right. He does them clean, he does them neat, he makes improvements. It's gonna look better than it did before. And I wholeheartedly support Dave and his application. I think it's good for Pawling. And I hope this issue of this easement of access to the property can be resolved. Because, I mean, all you have to do is come out and look, and maybe that's what has to happen. Come out and observe the people that come into the inn next door here. They're not coming in and out all the time. This is a one in the morning and usually leaving unless they're going to visit a family member. Most of the people that come are walking across the street to the bakery for breakfast. They're going to McKinney and Doyle for dinner, or they're going down to O'Connor's to have dinner. These people aren't coming in and out all the time. And we're trying to create this thing like this is a hotel. It may be designated as a hotel by the code, but at the end of the day, it's a B&B. People are not coming in and out constantly. It's not a hardship out here on Memorial Avenue with people coming and going all the time, and it's certainly not going to be on this property. So that's the end of my comments.
I just want to agree with what Glenn said. I am constantly in the village, driving around the village all day. And I pay particularly attention to Memorial Avenue and the people at the Station Inn. And they're there for the whole day. I mean, they don't, as Glenn just said, they're not driving in and out and about. So I agree with that.
If I may just respond to a comment about the white vehicle that seems to be protruding out into the access. The measurements that I spoke of on this drawing have nothing to do with vehicles that are parked in this tandem area. It's just a measurement from what would be a parking space that's 9 feet wide to the face of the walkway that's in front of the building. That's 10 feet and 11 feet. So it's, again, that's the picture and that's the reality of what of what the access looks like when cars are parked on both sides, but the measurements that I think are important in terms of identifying the space that's available, is this drawing that shows the distance between the edge of the parking space and the edge of the walkway.
Anybody else? Karen, sorry.
Remind me again, the measurements, you took them from the property, you were out on the property, you took
Yes.
these measurements? Are you a licensed surveyor?
I'm a licensed professional engineer.
I do just want to make it clear that a licensed surveyor has provided a survey for your record, and there's close to 22 feet.
Yeah, I thought this conflicted with what you all
And the
had
existing
provided
edge of
previously.
pavement is well within that space, which provides adequate room for everything that they're showing. So a hand-sketched version of this is not relevant based on the survey that's been provided to you all.
I disagree.
I have a few questions for Mr. Mafia when it's
Yeah,
appropriate.
let's
to
go
do so, but-
with the general public. Anybody else in the general public like to say something?
Yeah, Daniel Lamore, I live 19 Bridal Way. I'm coming in, not as a legal, from a legal standpoint too, but I'm gonna reiterate what Glenn was saying. I have a deli in Pawling, we've been here 36 years, and I know the pulse of Pawling. And when I see a new face, I ask them, how did you find out about Pawling and so forth? And people that come from Station Inn, I greet them well, and just talking to them, they're people, disposable income, very rich, no kids or anything. I think they bring a lot to the community. You know, I see them with bags from CVS, from the clothing shop across the street, and they seem to, I don't see a lot of traffic from these kind of people, and I'm just saying that it's very good for the business in general as a whole.
Thank you. Anybody else? No one else? Dave, go ahead.
Yeah. So Mr. Mafia started out by giving a legal opinion about the easement, which should be stricken from the record. He's not a lawyer. He gave a legal opinion about the easement, which was the point that I was talking about before. We're not talking about interpreting an easement. We're talking about access. And I haven't heard any, and you didn't bring a survey, correct, showing the dimensions?
Just the drawing as.
Just the drawing, not a, yes. And so you didn't bring a survey. We have a survey showing the 12-foot access way. You didn't address that.
I didn't see that access, so I can't answer.
Yes, okay. And why did you opine about the problem with the turning radius onto Smith Street for a car that was illegally
At the time,
parked?
there was a car parked there. and
Did
it
you know
was-
that,
it was
did you know
difficult.
that
It was difficult to
that it was
pull
illegal to
in
park
and
there?
out. Yeah. And the
Did
car
you
was
know
parked
that?
there. Yes, I did.
And you didn't
It
put
was-
that in your report though, did you?
No, I think I did mention it in the report.
No, you didn't.
Well, we could
You
read my
didn't put in,
report.
you did not put, that was illegal. I would have noticed that.
That's your opinion,
I
I guess.
still, and I didn't, the other thing I didn't get an answer to, I don't understand is, you're showing this picture of how are those cars going, how are your clients' cars gonna get in and out? Look at that. I mean, you can't.
It's passable.
You're
Cars can
talking
get
out,
through
do
there.
you understand you're talking about both sides of your mouth? You're saying on the one hand,
It's
it's
passable,
not.
what I'm saying, and what you're not listening to, because you don't wanna hear it, is that you cannot get a 12-foot access.
That's just false. I
It is.
mean, we have a survey.
You wanna
that-
ask a question, ask a question, don't call a liar.
Oh, wait a second, gentlemen.
Don't call a liar.
I
Gentlemen,
didn't use that word. Stop it.
Stop.
And
Gentlemen.
that's,
okay, here's what we're gonna do. Dave, would you address the board? Address the board?
And Dave, if, let's just keep it to questions. I think the questions are relevant. Let's just, and
Questions are
did you
fine.
get did you get an answer to that question? How are your clients getting out of
I
there?
started to try to explain that it's passable because you can fit an 8-foot Honda or something, or even something even wider. The question is, can you provide a 12-foot access driveway in the space that we've measured to be less than that, 10 feet to 11 feet?
but if it was 21 feet, would you say that if the total distance was 21 feet and the parking space is 9 feet, which you mentioned, what does that come out to be?
It's not.
No, I didn't.
I won't do the math.
But if it was,
you can do
if
the
it
math
was,
yourself, then
if
that's
it was,
fine, but it's not there.
But aren't you required
That's
to
a
have a
hypothetical
12-foot
question, and
access
it's not there.
aisleway for your use?
The access from Smith Street is 18 feet 5 inches wide.
But aren't you required for your use to have a 12-foot wide drive
I
aisle?
believe so. I don't believe that's the case.
Have you read the
I
statute?
don't, what I understand from the
All right,
statute is that you need.
Okay.
Okay, here's
12 foot
what
access
we're gonna
to
do.
property.
Here's what we're gonna do. We're not gonna go back and forth anymore. Does anybody else have anything from the public? No? Okay.
I just wanted to, just a couple of things, just some comments, just to close.
How long is this gonna go on, folks? I mean, seriously.
Well, it's a public hearing. They're
Well,
able to make hey, hold on, hold on, hold on.
Anybody he wants, but.
Tony,
We're saying
Tony,
to let,
you wanna speak? Come
let
up
the
and say your
comments
name.
come, they need to come to the board.
And you can speak too, and Mr. Stenger can speak
No, I don't
as
wanna
well.
speak.
No, I'm just saying, we're not closing anybody off, but
Tony, if you wanna
everybody's entitled
talk,
to
you can
speak.
come up. But you have to do it by the process.
I don't
Say who you are,
I
talk,
apologize, I don't want to.
don't insult anybody in the audience.
So, the reference kept being made, and Glenn pointed this out, that this was a two-family house. A family under New York law is defined as, they don't have to be related. You could have a group of people. This house could have 10 or 15 people. I mean, he's assuming that it's gonna be one or two, and that's just not, that's not the case. And so the intensity of the use, I mean, again, I think that's not necessarily relevant, but it's just something that needs to be addressed. And his study is based on these studies that really have nothing to do with how we run the operation, what happens, the number of cars. But we've provided you with direct information about what our occupancy is, what kind of cars come in, when they come in. He's talking about service people, even though we've stated very clearly that we don't have food service and we don't have a restaurant. It's people coming in quietly, and we've never had, we've been running this hotel now for 6 years, and we haven't, knock on wood, had an issue. I mean, people seem to like it, and it's a very symbiotic part of the community. And this part of Memorial Avenue, it's in I'll say it again, it's in a B1 zone, which is, if you look at the master plan, that's what we want to promote economic development. And this is economic development plus historical preservation. So I'll end it there.
Okay, great. Okay, I think we're gonna close the public meeting. Or should we do it?
Just ask if there's anybody else that wants to speak.
Okay.
You don't have to close the public hearing. You can make a decision whether you want to close it or not. You could leave it open, adjourn it to the next.
Does anybody
meeting.
else want to speak?
Mr. Chairman, I don't wish to speak, but I would ask if you could keep the public hearing open for a period of 2 weeks for written submission.
For what, for what?
Written submission.
Written submission?
I'm gonna look at my notes from this evening.
Joe, do we have to keep the public hearing for that open?
You can do that. You can close the public hearing, well, you can close the live public hearing, leave the record open for 2 weeks if you choose to do that. The purpose of that, I expect, would be for both the applicant and anybody else who wants to be heard to address specific questions that came up tonight. And there were some questions that came up tonight that, look like both sides may have some additional answers to, and I think that would be appropriate to
So I'm gonna make a motion that we close the live public hearing
and hold the public hearing open for 2 weeks for written comment.
for written comments.
I very much appreciate that motion, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to have a second to that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, good. Marie?
I have a completely possibly very ignorant question.
First of all, we want to vote on the motion.
To keep this
We're
closed.
closing the live, but we're going to keep the record segment open.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Right there, the motion. Is
Are you
it-
suggesting that you have a planning question? That would be
I have
interesting.
I live in the village question, is that like
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
taboo here? I mean, I don't know.
It's
What,
fair.
what is the definition of a family? Like, how many people and how many cars, can someone answer that for me? Because I feel like if a family can have, 15 people, then essentially there could be, all kinds of cars and different ages and different people running in and out of this, you know, two-family or one-family house at all times versus this hotel that is contained to a number of parking spaces where adult people are coming and going. This isn't New York City where there's darting in and out at all kinds of hours because there isn't that much to do here. So I don't know, I'm just
No, I think
listening in my.
it's a very relevant question. It gets to something that I had inquired about earlier, which is understanding what the potential difference in impacts is or demand for parking when you really assess what the two uses are. As Dave has alluded to, there is a definition of family that I don't want to opine on off the top of my head.
Okay.
I think it would be part of this next round of submissions for both sides if they want to opine on, but I think it's a very relevant planning question
Well,
because
you
that's
can find the definition of family generally in the zoning code for most municipalities.
Right, I'm just saying I don't want to.
Yeah, I wouldn't guess what it
No,
is today.
It's two or more unrelated people, or
Right.
two or more people who, and you have to share a kitchen, you know, you can't like divide it up among different, but you don't have to be related.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think
And
your
that's
point- I
a
think your
pretty
point is
common
correct.
definition, again,
So,
across most
yeah.
municipalities.
Okay.
No, it's fair.
Closing, any comments before, okay?
Actually, so Joe, how do you want to address this question about the hotel versus the bed and breakfast? Should the planning board seek an interpretation?
Yes, I think
Okay.
they should.
Let's close that loop. So, do they need to vote on that or?
So we're good.
Yeah.
Do you think we should make a motion to find out whether we have?
I don't know if you need to
Yeah.
make a motion or not.
I mean, let's make
It
a
just
motion
needs to
so
be
the
done.
record's clear
Yeah.
that the planning board is requesting that the CEO, code enforcement officer, building inspector, make a determination
And
as
so-
to the use.
Yeah, and so Vivian will spearhead that effort.
Yes.
Thank you.
Why don't somebody make that motion?
I make a motion that we determine whether it's a hotel or a bed and breakfast.
Second.
Yeah, I'll second.
I'll third. Three, I don't know, whatever it is.
This way we'll save a lot of arguments.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Okay, that being said, we'll reconvene. Once we get the written comments back from each other, we'll come to some sort of determination.
Be on the agenda for the next meeting?
Yeah, sure,
Thank you all.
definitely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
What's that?
Is there a date for submission?
Yeah, oh,
I think it's 2 weeks, I think it's
Okay,
for 2
2 weeks from today.
Any other business to come before the
No,
board?
other business.
How about escrow?
Escrow is
Good?
good.
Okay. And so we have the sketch conferences that will turn to site plan,
Yes.
right? So you'll need to see escrow, what am I trying to say here?
You do established escrow accounts for when they come back in, right, with real.
Yeah.
Right, when they come back in this time around.
So do you need an approximate amount of what should be required? Okay. So, I mean, I generally say it's $2,500 per application, and that carries into the next review cycle. I don't know what
Is that
Jen's.
enough, or should we increase it?
No, I think that's, I mean, it's a,
Other kids?
for planning and engineering. Yeah.
Say that. Hang on a second, I'm sorry, Ken. I'll answer your question. I'm sorry, what did you
So
suggest?
she asks us what we think she should ask for escrow.
Right.
And I'm saying for planning and engineering, we asked for 2,500.
Yeah, I would say 30 for legal. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I didn't know the process.
Yeah, I think
For each
we're-
application.
People from the other meetings?
Yeah.
When do these, this?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I mean.
Oh, I can't make.
I just, is it a transcript?
And I have a motion that we adjourn.
Well, I don't know, I don't know.
I just don't know the process.
Hold on, there's something going on here.
Excuse me. How do our minutes get transcribed? Is it a transcript, word for word, or is it your record? Ken is asking when
I
it'll be
try to
available.
I try to keep it close to word for word.
You did a really good job, I just didn't know how it got done. I mean.
She records it.
I record it.
Oh, you
She takes
record it?
notes.
Yep.
Okay, Do you have a sense of when you might have this transcript?
This one is, I try to have it done within 2 weeks.
Okay,
This is a lot longer than,
But then it would have to be adopted too.
so.
Yeah.
and it would have to be adopted,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. I thought you guys really worked hard at this tonight. Thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have a motion.
I had a motion, I made the motion, you seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Really?
He's adjourned.
So,
Is this guy here?
Yeah, he's waiting. Yeah, he's on the board of trustees.
Oh.
Come on up there, buddy. Close this thing up.
Is he getting an award?
I hope so.
You know, it's been a long time since you could pass envelopes.
So we're adjourned.
Okay, adjourned.
His address, and email